This is update for July 25, 2023, day 517 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for July 24. So I'm going to start, as you can imagine, with China, and it's going to be a little bit of general strategic updates, and then we're going to switch to situation in Ukraine, as I always do. So first, China. There's something's going on in China. Hard to say, obviously. Some kind of tectonic plates are moving there, because first, Minister of Foreign Affairs there, which was sort of lost in quotes for months, never to be found again, and there's new one. The previous one, the one that got lost, was a protege of current Chinese president. The new one is sort of kind of like a neutral one, more sort of middle of the road between, if you remember, I mentioned before, there is this war party and trade party, but that party is really let's conquer the war through the trade, and then sort of final blows through the war. It's just the end goal is the same. It just the roads are different to the end goal. But anyway, so the new, actually he's not new. He's old new Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's kind of like a compromise figure. Again, it was extraordinary meeting to appoint new one, and then also in this extraordinary meeting, the Chinese, let's say, political top, because it's, Chinese parliament is, as you can imagine, in any communist country, it's they just do what they told the members of the parliament, so it's not really a real one, because it's always decided within Politburo, which means like a council of few who decide really everything, and then the parliament just rubber stamps the whole situation. So they also appointed a new head of central bank, also compromise figure, and definitely not a person aligned with current Chinese president. So sort of, I wouldn't say. I guess I can say that he's more closer to this trade party, and obviously more open to reestablishing relationships with the U.S. So as you can see, the changes are sort of more not in favor of the Chinese president. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but there's definitely something is happening under the surface, and probably it's partially driven by the dire economic situation in China, and that might be forcing changes in Politburo in the way they think, and thinking that the course of the current Chinese president is not going to lead to any positive outcome. But this is obviously at this point speculation. But there's something happening there. And now let's actually switch closer to the front line. I'm going to talk a little bit about more focused on Russia, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Ukraine. So first of all, about this Wagner mercenaries. They still not all there in their camp, which is here where this white square is. The last sort of pieces of the Wagner group are arriving there around August 1, August 1st, August 2nd. So as I said, if there's anything happening, it's probably going to be mid-August, towards the end of the August, could be easily September. And again, this is still quite speculative, but it's definitely not sort of 5% chance. It's sizable. Let's put it this way. Very hard to have a to truly understand probability of this event happening. However, to sort of support that there is something, there is continuing pressure by Russian forces against the U.S. forces in Syria, with a basically big goal is to squeeze U.S. from Syria. Um, Also, you probably seen this attack by Su-35 against the U.S. UAV. But the bigger picture, it could be actually, it just, again, just a speculation. In a way, if you really think U.S. had pulled some troops to Jordan around Syria, and there is a, I think, sizable number of F-35s there were sent, which is, the best. Well, not really the best, but currently produce the best fighters US has. The best ones, is, for those who haven't watched the videos, is F-22, but it's not being produced anymore by the US because it's too expensive, too difficult, and so on. Um, so so that pulled some good amount of very valuable resource from the U.S. to this Near East, probably proper way. Then we all know that Iran also pulled some forces into the Persian Gulf. There's something in Europe being pulled, and then also China. So as you can see, if you kind of like think about the strategy, it looks like U.S. forces are being kind of pulled in as many directions as possible, so that they don't have decisive advantage in case there is attack. It's sort of like, I think good analogy would be like DDoS attack, right? Where you attacked from many directions and you don't know which direction is important, and you pull your forces in all directions, and then you cannot have you cannot defend decisively. I mean, there's no question that China is a top priority, but ideally you want to pull your opponent into as many directions as possible, which is what is happening right now with Syria, with the Persian Gulf. And then if you remember that extra 3,000 mobilized troops were sent to Europe, which again probably pulling them into Poland and so on. So it's just observation, but we'll find out later if there is something more to it. But what happened in Russia? Russian parliament passed the law, and again, the parliament is totally is a puppet there. It's just what the call it Politburo in Russia decides, because this is the same power structure. Even technically, there is a president, and he has final word for everything. There is no question about it, and he has sort of power of initiative. But there is definitely Politburo, which is not called Politburo, but all of these people around him are effectively, part of that Politburo. And so they passed they asked the parliament to pass the law that effectively tightens the screw on the whole mobilization system in Russia. So there are very high fines if you're not helping mobilization authorities or military authorities to mobilize people, if you don't provide a list of people who live, let's say, in the building or work in the company and so on. So there's basically there is desire to create a perfect database of all people who are available, where they are at nearly real time. And then also, I mentioned this before, there's sort of this electronic account for everyone, where you're going to receive this mobilization notice or whatever it's called. And once you receive into this electronic account, that automatically, you cannot leave Russia. So that's totally different what it used to be, where you can still leave Russia, no problem at this point. And it also means the importance of this is basically press of a button, and you effectively mobilize whatever number of people you need, because these people at this point cannot leave Russia and totally visible in the system, and especially the other members of society are required to basically provide information on them where they are. So it's effectively it's extremely difficult to sort of evade mobilization at this point in Russia. Then they also increased age and all other things, but there is also, the more important is actually the message um, that was said by the member of Russian parliament who was pushing this law. Basically said, he openly said that this is preparation for the big war. So just for those who may not get it, war in Ukraine, it's a little war from their perspective. So this is preparation for the big war. And also, very interesting point in this law, there were some exceptions usually, and that's actually true in Ukraine, where if you have like 3 children or something else, or you are the only parent, you will not be mobilized and things like that. So basically, there are some basic protections. So in this law, it actually all protections are removed. Everybody is going to get called, no matter what your circumstances. Nobody cares. So very, it's like looks like a total mobilization in a way. Not right now, but it's obviously is total mobilization where you will need everybody, literally everybody, on the front line, and which makes sense if you're preparing for a big war. That's what you need, and then related to this also. Again, this is also coincides with these big moves in China, although they are actually sort of it's possible to say that they are towards moves towards de-escalation, but we'll see. Also, Russian Minister of Defense went to North Korea, where he was greeted with the highest level, the most sort of the best greetings he can get. So again, this visit is not just a random visit. The Chinese counterparty there, so they, this is going to be some kind of like internal discussion on their future and next steps, which were already planned by the Russian president and Chinese president when they met. I think it was March. And by the way, there is another meeting when the Russian president is going to go to China in October. So again, this alliance still works and live. In terms of this hiccup with Iran that Russia had, it doesn't look that's a big deal. The common goals are more important than this just small spat that they had between themselves. So things continue as usual, as they say. Now let's actually switch to the situation in Ukraine. Before we go to the walks through the front line, I would just want to mention a couple things. So first one, the Russian forces attacked Ukrainian ports on the Danube River, which is unfortunately cut off, which is here where I'm trying to show them. So this was, I wouldn't say last ports, but in some way last ports where Ukraine can, through which Ukraine can export grain. And there are 2 ports, Ismail and Reni there. Reni was severely damaged. No situation in Ismail, but probably similar situation. So what you can see here, the Russian strategy is not to try to attack the cargo ships that go to Ukraine. They just decided, because that could have a lot of negative repercussions internationally in terms of foreign affairs, because you can attack ship of whatever country XYZ, and that's just going to create a lot of problems. So what the Russian side decided to do, they just decided to destroy the port facilities. So you simply so there's no infrastructure, and you cannot then export because infrastructure is destroyed, and nobody going to be investing a lot of money during the wartime. And also attacking this grain elevators. Basically, it's just silos. Grain silos is just where they store a lot of grain. They also attack those. So basically, all the accumulation infrastructure is being destroyed as well. So, which is, in order to export, you first need to accumulate large quantities of grain from various farmers and so on, and then you bring them to the port and put on a ship. So they methodically destroying the export capabilities for Ukraine, for agriculture, and it's not only agriculture; it also means um, steel products that Ukraine makes, which is Ukraine is was one of the largest steel producers in the world. I think it used to be like number like I think 6, 7, 8, or something like that in the world. Now that is probably going to be dead as well. So effectively, Ukraine lost last remnants of its own economy. There's effectively no value add at any sort of meaningful scale. Yeah, there's obviously some tiny things here and there, but at large scale, relative to the amount of population, relative to the whole demands of the war, there is no value add produced at this point in Ukraine. And to be fair, a significant portion for this situation, the significant responsibility is on Ukrainian government, which, as I said, created in Ukraine economic desert, economic Sahara, with its own regulations, laws that prevent any economic activity. Lawlessness, where the companies are taking stolen from people, and the economic assets are stolen from entrepreneurs or people who invest. So anyway, so this sort of internally made disaster then meets this externally made disaster, and it's complete disaster. That's what's the situation in Ukraine. As a result, Ukrainian president now is asking for extra 500 million per month from the West to support, because obviously the whole agriculture and steel making is dead. And effectively, demands, as I said, that actually demands are going to go only up, because this also means a lot of people who don't have any earnings, and somehow they need to live. So it's just it will create pressure to for whoever did not leave Ukraine to leave, and obviously that doesn't this doesn't include men, because they're not allowed. It's forbidden to leave Ukraine for men, and so this will be another pressure on women to leave, to try to earn whatever they can in the West, and then for the men, that's additional pressure, I guess, to go into the army. As I mentioned before, Ukraine, the quality of the people who join the army, or who called into at this point mobilized into army, is going down. The amount of volunteers is also dwindling. It's from the beginning of the war, where there was a lot of them. Now it's very little, and so overall quality of replacement is going down from all perspectives. And that's what I mentioned before, that unfortunately this approach to the war that's being done by Ukrainian political top is disastrous in the long run, because it destroys the most motivated people, and then you have left with people who have very little motivation, and that's going to be a big problem as the time progresses, because the Russian side is very clearly waging the war of attrition. They understand very clearly that there is no chance for Ukraine in the war of attrition. Uh, and the only sort of, yes, maybe hope or opportunity for Ukraine if Russia starts big war, which is where it's trying to go, where it's going right now, then Russian resources obviously will be a majority will be distracted to other theaters of operation, and that gives a little bit of break for Ukraine. But um, that's not sort of foregone conclusion that that's going to happen. What is for sure is going to happen is another round of mobilization in Russia sometime in probably September, October, because there is also attrition. Russian forces also dwindling and shrinking in size, and they need more troops on the ground, or they will be again the same situation would happen with Izum, Balaklia, and so on. That this whole area where Russian troops just simply withdrew because they were too thin, and that's all. There was not sort of success of Ukrainian command or anything like that. It was just literally war of attrition where Russian political top did not want to replace troops, did not want to send replenishments because politically it's obviously not popular in Russia. As you can imagine, nobody wants to go and die. Everybody hopes that someone else will do that for them. And so it's politically unpopular, and the Russian president tried to push that moment till last moment, and then when the disaster started to happening on the front line, then he was in a position where, okay, there is disaster happening, or I'm going to upset some people politically. So he decided finally to upset some people politically, and something similar is going to happen sometime in the fall. Just the timing is not clear. I want to mention a little bit about Russian this kamikaze UAVs and explain how they work, because you probably seen that they are very successful, which is true on the media in the West, and and the success is pretty impressive. It's about like 1/3 of the launches are successful, which is very actually successful. This is very high number, and the way they actually work is actually with the help of Orlan 10, which is going back to my favorite topic that Ukraine still does not have replacement or sort of its own Orlan 10. And as you can imagine, this Orlan 10 is in a way like kind of like a backbone in or linchpin of a lot of Russian sort of capabilities and successes on the front line. So one, it supports artillery, which is standard. Now we're also learning that it's effectively like a guidance for this kamikaze UAVs, because they actually by themselves they cannot stay long in the air, so they really need how to say target guidance from Orlan 10, which I mentioned before can fly up in the air high for a very long time, and that's why this it's an excellently engineered product. That's all I can say about it. And it's a perfectly engineered product for the war, because it's not. It's in a way, in many ways, it's like T-34 if you compare for the World War II. It's not the best, tank on its own. So let's say Panther was many times better, but when you have a lot of quantities of it and it's extremely reliable, it's always available for the rest of the troops. It works. It makes sort of miracles for the Russian side, and so all of these miracles happening with this UAV hits, thanks to Orlan 10, because they work in a pair, and even you can. If you pay attention at the videos of what's where of the successes of successful hits, majority of them is stationary targets, and that's a reason because this kamikaze UAV can be in the air only 40 minutes. So basically, Orlan is flying, looking for the stationary target, and then you need 40 minutes for the UAV to arrive to the kamikaze UAV to get there. So they, for the most part, they're looking for something that's stationary, that's not moving. And to be fair, in a war, if you're not moving, you're dead. So that's another saying that the stationary artillery is probably thing of the past. It's being used, and because there is not, there's not enough available of this self-propelled howitzers. But if things, let's say, escalate to really a big war, everything that's stationary is gonna get taken out pretty quickly. In that really means all of the artillery, Soviet and this triple seven howitzers from the U.S. FH-70, all of that is going to get taken out very, very quickly. So now let's switch to the walks through the front line. I'm going to do, as always, in a clockwise fashion, starting from the north. So the situation along the state border is more or less the same, meaning there is some level of intensity, but it doesn't look out of the norm. Now let's move to the North Luhansk front line. So today is the day when Russian side had some successes. Again, they captured one tiny village. I don't know, was whatever 20 houses semi-destroyed, but nevertheless, they made some progress. They pushed Ukrainian troops behind this kind of like a stream, small river, and they basically established a small bridgehead on the western side of this river. That's the sort of significance of this event. Again, this is not a major offensive. This is a result of simply Ukrainian defenses are too thin, and there's not enough heavy equipment. That's all it is. It's just a question of Ukrainian command either bringing more or enough to stem Russian attacks, or they will obviously continue. The successes will continue. But it is. I just want to make it clear. It's all tactical fighting, and it's just a loss within this tactical fight. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. Things here are again stable, the same. Let me jump to the southern sector because that's really where the action is. So Ukrainian troops sort of in process of liberating Klishchiyivka. Some sources say that it's already being liberated. I would say probably sort of the final touches of the fight. Let's put this way, better way to say it. But regardless, it's going to get lost by the Russian side. In this case, the reason this is happening is because the sort of spearhead here is this Azov Brigade, which is another name is 3rd Brigade. It's diluted version of the sort of legacy Azov. Nevertheless, it's still better than the regular military unit. And so that's the only reason why there is a success here. If there were sort of regular units, things would be sort of stable and without any changes. So again, there is some push here. Again, this is the same as with Russian situation up north. It's all tactical success, doesn't lead to anything basically. Not a major. It's not offensive, not major offensive. Ukrainian troops are not encircling Bahmut the way it's presented. It's so far as like us flying to Mars basically, encircling Bahmut. So this is just a very local tactical success. Nevertheless, it is success, which is great. Now let's move to the central Donbass front line. Things here are as broken record. The same similar areas of attacks, Marinka, north of Avdiivka, a little bit sort of lower activity, but the same directions, the same results, meaning Ukrainian forces managing to hold their line, and Russian forces are not able to get anything. Now let's move um, to the Zaporizhya front line. Things here are sort of relatively quiet, not even major tactical skirmishes, so really becoming somewhat quieter section of the front line. I'm not saying this is going to be quiet here because there will be continuing attempts, I guess, at least at the small scale level. Don't know what's the Ukrainian command decided. As I said before, in my opinion, this is totally a road to nowhere for Ukrainian side to continue attacks here, as long as Ukrainian army the way it is in terms of organization. It just will not be able to have a decisive victory here. Then the final section of the front line, this along the Dnipro River, things here are stable. So basically, Ukraine's side has small bridgeheads. Russian side does not try to destroy. So basically, status quo. Both sides kind of trying to preserve their own lives and prefer not to kill each other at this point. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Bye bye.